Show.
My name is Karen Strayer, and I am running for school board in Division 5, which is a large portion of Florence, down the 25 corridor over to 18. I attended Boone County Schools, graduated from Boone County Schools in the upper third of my class. I am a mom. My daughter went to Boone County Schools until the 10th grade, and I'm a grandmother, and my grandchildren go to school in Kenton County, so they're not far away. My platform is I'm dedicated to being a voice for our parents, teachers, and the students in our Boone County community. I am a retired nurse. My career included being a facility administrator and regional educator for Kentucky, Southern Ohio, and Southern Indiana. While I was a nurse, I advocated for patient rights, both in Frankfort and in Washington, D.C. I do have an associate degree of applied science. I graduated cum laude, and I was a member of the Phi Theta Kappa at the time of graduation, of which I was the membership chair, and I had the largest increase of membership that the school had seen. My big three, my most important issues are legal, parental, and guardian rights, transparency, communication, and the financial accountability of our school board.
My name is Cindy Young. I'm running for Boone County School Board, seat Division 4. I've lived here for 18 years, almost 19 years. I have two children. My son is a junior. My daughter graduated last year, went to NKU. I've been a stay-at-home mom for 20 years. I started going to school board meetings 2 years ago, and I've been to just about every school board meeting. I think I've missed maybe 4 or 5. That's it in the last 2 years. What I felt was that I was being isolated from my son's education. And what I noticed was that the school board operates in isolation. I was concerned at the time about getting the kids back in school. That was during NTI. And then I became concerned about getting the mask off the kids, the mandates for the mask. I believe it should have been a choice. Everything that I or other parents said at school board meetings fell on deaf ears. We never got a response or any kind of acknowledgement. I homeschooled my daughter from 6th grade through graduation. I see a big difference in education compared to where she was as a junior compared to where my son is as a junior. It is vastly different, and it should not be that way. So my big 3 important issues are getting the focus back on education. Anything that takes away from education needs to be looked at really hard and probably should need to go. Improving transparency between the schools and parents, and upholding parental rights.
When you're walking door to door and you're talking to parents, what are they saying?
I've gotten a lot of great feedback. So many parents are concerned about the quality of education their children are receiving. There's been a lot of concern about social emotional learning, portrait of a graduate. More parents than I thought that are concerned about the panorama surveys. All that takes away from education. So many of them mentioned get back to cursive, teaching cursive so these kids can read documents, teach history the right way, teach about our Constitution. There's just so many social agendas that are taking away from educating our kids.
Karen, what are you hearing from parents as you're knocking on doors?
Talking to both sides of the aisle, all political parties, because this is a nonpartisan race, and listening to their opinions. So the stakeholders I'm talking to aren't just parents. A lot of them are grandparents. Some of them haven't had any children yet. So I'm not just talking about our big 3. Of course, I am talking about the parent rights and everything else. But one thing that really concerns those who don't have children in school is the recent school levy that increased. 1/4 of Boone County had their properties reassessed, if I'm correct there. I was one of those. My assessment increased by 0.5%. That's quite a bit. So they're already getting that 64 cents per dollar is going to the school board, but then they did the 4% increase, taking it up to 65 per dollar. And it was hard for me to comprehend why. And then I looked at the reasons for it. Of course, they list inflation, but we're all having inflationary problems. And I think that with the increase of our assessments, they would be gaining some more cash flow to offset that. They want to put more money into multilingual learners, and I'm not against that, but my concern is that may be more the focus and not putting more into the classroom for all children. One thing they listed was safety, and we are so blessed in Boone County. I don't know if people are aware, but our SRO program began in 1999. So we're way ahead of the curve for the recent bill that passed that states that all schools have to have an SRO officer. And we've had that. So I love that Boone County has initiated that and is ahead of the safety of our kids as far as having an SRO. And I recently went to the six middle schools and distributed pocketbook constitutions. And we had to be buzzed in for every one of those schools. Our schools are not accessible like they used to be where you just walk in. You have to identify yourself. And I was very proud of that. But looking at our recent education scores, and I really want to make a note on this. If you look at the trajectory of the decrease in our reading and math, it didn't just start with COVID. The scores started dropping from 2015 to current, and it is a steady downward trajectory. So we can't just blame this on COVID or the most recent political climate. We have been failing our kids for 7 years, actually prior to that, because we weren't doing great. We were average before that. And so we really need to focus on getting back to the basics, like Cindy said. One of the other things I talk to people about also, and it's quite disturbing to me, is under the parental rights. I mean, we keep being focused on getting our legislators to form Kentucky revised statutes to put in writing, so to speak, parental rights, when in fact our Supreme Court has been defending parental rights for decades. So the parental rights are there. We just haven't been enforcing the laws of, for instance, PPRA. It's been around since the late 1970s, and it protects students from having to reveal personal information in certain surveys. That's a federal law. And then we also have FERPA, which is a federal law that affords parents the right to have access to their children's education records, the right to seek to have the records amended, and the right to have some control over the disclosure of personally identifiable information from the education records. Now, these are two federal laws that are being broken throughout the United States by having these surveys, and they may use the parents have signed the consent to allow it, which is why we're pushing to opt out of those consents, because it's a fine line. We don't need to be giving our children identifiable information away, nor do we need to be collecting it. Another thing, which leads me to the Chromebook. A lot of the parents feel, just on the level I just mentioned, but the Chromebooks are taking away the communication between the teachers and the children and the peer communication. We're not giving them that ability to gain self-esteem through communication, to gain critical thinking skills. And that disturbs me more than anything. Social emotional learning, I've had a lot of discussions with parents about that. The problem with social emotional learning, first of all, it was created in 1994 and introduced to the Jefferson County School District in 2009. We are the guinea pigs who try things out for the country. The problem with SEL is it ignores the spiritual, physical, and societal well-being, and it's a part of every subject of every grade. I think that is one of the distractions that is keeping our children from learning. The other thing I want to mention is diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that now includes belonging. I am number 17 of a large family. My family it's as diverse as the melting pot of America. From the diversity that we accepted before, is now being spotlighted to be negative. Martin Luther King did not want this.
I do have a child in Boone County schools. I opt him out of the surveys. I question why they need that information. What are they doing with that? Where's that information stored? Who has access to that information? So I don't let him take the surveys. I opt him out of each one of them.
Are your schools letting you opt out?
They are. My son's school, they actually have it on their calendar. It says on their school calendar that they send out, like every week they send out an update. It's always got the calendar for the rest of the year, and it has on there the dates, and it'll say panorama survey. And then they send us an email well before each survey, and with a link to opt out. Now they say I can't opt him out of all of them. I have to opt him out of each one. From what I have seen, and I'm keeping a very close eye on it now that I know more about these and how dangerous they are, his school has been very transparent about it. Now, his home high school, they're not as transparent about it.
How often are they initiating these surveys?
There's been one so far. And then there's makeup days for the surveys. For the kids that missed them, they have a makeup day. And I'll pull up the calendar. I think there might be 2 makeup days, and there's going to be another one coming up after the first of the year. And then they've got the makeup days for that one. I mean, they are desperate for these kids to take these surveys. I'd like to know more about how they're doing it. Yeah, I think it's easier in elementary school to catch this stuff. It's a lot harder in high school. There's not nearly as much communication with parents. I'd love to be able to have a syllabus for every one of his classes so I can know what's going on.
Yeah, because the only thing that they have right now, if you go under curriculum on the board, they show what the standards, goals, whatever it is. But for each subject, it does provide the mental health area. I can't remember what it's called, but they are meeting that standard. And it seems to be listed for every subject.
So my high schooler, he has a contract for every class. So at the very beginning of school, they would send home a syllabus, but really wasn't that much of a syllabus. It just kind of outlined what they were going to learn and not specifics. And then the back page, he had to sign every contract, quote unquote contract. And I told him never to sign anything through the school. He's not 18 years old. You are not to sign anything.
That's what I've told my son too. I told him your signature means nothing. You're under 18. It means nothing. So now everywhere that they ask for his signature, I just write minor.
Let's be honest. Do these kids even know how to sign their name?
Exactly. I had to teach him.
Yeah.
I had to teach my son how to write his name in cursive because he got taught cursive for half of the year in 3rd grade. That was it.
I think one of the biggest things that raised me to the financial part was the parent who stood up at the July meeting and really did his research and started telling us what they're spending their money on. For instance, the $10,000 contract with an activist group that promotes transgenderism to our youth. And along with that, they allowed a transgender trainee, an individual, to educate school counselors on how to help students that may struggle with identity. I can't believe that we're focusing on this one thing. This was a one-sided training. There wasn't training towards the other side. Also, we've talked a lot about the surveys. Boone County pays $80,000 a year for a survey that told us that less than 6% of students say they don't have an adult that they can talk to outside the home. Yet, we have no idea how many of those 6% are in the foster system. And those children are going to identify with not having an adult to talk to. And he also brought up the fact that activist teachers are including their pronouns in emails to parents and colleagues.
My name is Cindy Young, and my top 3 issues are upholding parental rights, improving transparency, and focus on essential basics for education.
I'm Karen Strayer. My campaign goals are parental rights and to ensure they are protected, transparency and communication must be improved, and financial accountability.
Save the children.